So welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Flashpoint, South China Sea from GMT Games. This is a game designed by Harold Buchanan. And this is part of his Flashpoint series, Volume 1 in that series. This is a short format, like half hour, 40 minutes at most, lunchtime style game.
I think Flashpoint is an apt name.
Yes.
Because it's like quick.
And more than any game that GMT makes, this does exactly what it says on the tin. It does not play longer than 30 or 40 minutes for your first game.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
So this is a game of kind of area control. So it's a little mini card-driven game. So you've got ops values and events. And you're using that to place both diplomatic influence and economic influence, as well as some other bits and pieces in and around the South China Sea. A lot of it's abstracted, like it's like a box with some tracks in it that represents Vietnam, and then attached to that is the Parcel Islands. There's like a separate box where you're putting in like naval resources or Chinese reclamation projects. So it's a very abstract, very high-level game, but this is a two-player game of almost chess.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
I'm putting stuff in here, you're trying to counter that. I'm putting stuff over here, you're trying to counter that. And you start doing this, and I have to counter that. But you're doing it with an extremely limited hand of cards, but also pool of influence cubes. You have like 14 or 15. And
that's it.
There's more spaces than that on the board. Yeah. And it's a very tense little game. And I like this style of game. Mm-hmm. It reminds me, in a way, it's quite different. It's like 13 Days, where it's a very big game, and it's been really refined down into this small little package that you can whip out in the lunchtime, play it, and then you've had a great time with a game.
Yeah.
And it's not just too light and airy and fluffy.
One of the things I really like about this, the way it plays out, and we actually played this like 5 years ago when it was in early design phases. I remember at that time thinking, oh, this is a little bit clunky, and because it wasn't refined. Yeah. But comparing this to that, my goodness, doesn't even feel the same.
Yeah.
Much quicker, much quicker hitting. But the thing I love about this game, and it reminds me a lot of Fort Sumter, the same concepts. You've just got a limited amount of resources. You've got is it like 15 cubes?
It's 14
I think,
or
3,
15.
4, 8, 9, 15, 16 cubes. I think I just counted. You've got 16, you've got 14 available or on the board at the start, and then you've got a couple in reserve.
Yeah.
And it's all about using those to win the regions that you need to win through the scoring phase, which is very cool. Scoring is all the way throughout the game. You could continually you can only score each region once.
Yes.
But you could have a strategy where I'm going to build up here, then I'm going to score. I'm going to build up here, then I'm going to score. Now you're going to lose that way because...
Well, it's a case of, do I have the scoring cards to do that?
Right.
And then the capability
because you have to have the right
your
card.
Cubes. That's the cool thing about this game is, unlike something like Twilight Struggle, where you're beholden to like when out of that massive deck the scoring cards come up, all your cards have the capacity to score somewhere on the board. Mm-hmm. It's just a case of doing it in a timely manner.
Right.
And hopefully it's not so obvious you're going for this thing.
Well, and that's the challenge.
Yep. It's very neat.
But that concept, what I really like with only the limited amount of cubes, I mean, you kind of, when you don't have cubes unavailable, you just kind of move stuff around. So, I don't have any more cubes, but I really want to score Vietnam. I'm going to take one of my economic influence, because, by the way, that disappears at the end of the game, or end of the round, and I'm going to move it over to diplomacy because I really need it there, or diplomatic in Vietnam.
Yeah. Oh, I've scored this country. I can evacuate some of it to a different one. But then you hurt yourself for next card.
Yep.
And so it's mitigating or gambling. How far do you want to do? A little bit of that risk management stuff is really neat.
And I think in the grand scheme of this operational scale conflict, right? It's really this entire region. We're deciding, okay, I like to think of it thematically a lot. Oh, I'm moving my money from this area because I don't need it over there any longer, and I'm putting it in the Philippines. Yeah. Or I'm working harder on their diplomacy with them to try to get them more on our side. To me, it's very thematic and very cool.
It's what's our current focus.
Yeah.
Hey, we invested a bunch over here.
We won that
cool.
battle.
Yeah, like, we achieved our aims at that moment because we scored it. Well, now they're like spending that money, it's going away, but I'm
Yeah.
investing new money into here. But it's a little simulation of that cycle, which is really fun, you know. And the other aspect of this is you have like the more physical, what do you call those? Like assets. So the Chinese are building those Chinese reclamation islands, the little artificial islands with like airstrips and stuff that they're building. But then the US has these freedom of navigation operations. So, you know, they're sending in like the Seventh Fleet to kind of sail through and like
Just open up the
have
shipping
have
lanes.
a
Yeah.
presence there and to make sure things are going along nicely and not doing too much of those. So you've got, you know, the kind of abstract diplomacy and economic stuff that you're doing. Hey, Congress approved this package. We're sending money to Vietnam. But then it's like, all right, we're going to sail the boats into.
Yeah.
And those are connected to some of the countries, Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. And the interplay between those two, I think, is also fun because your naval ships support your economic and your diplomatic efforts within that country as well.
Yeah.
And bringing all that stuff together, you have a better chance of scoring that particular country, which is fun to do.
Well, and in the 7 scoring cards, 5 of them are the regions, right? Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. 2 of them are the CR and FONOP, so the ocean spaces,
naval affairs,
the naval
yeah.
stuff, and then the other one is economics. So I like that also, that I think Harold made it. You can't ignore the naval opera. You just can't.
No,
because
that's
it
very
does
important.
affect the scoring of those 3 regions.
Which are the like highest scoring regions,
Right?
Potentially, at least.
Yeah, you can score more. So I like how it all fits together. I like how it, I think, plays out, and I enjoy that. There's a lot of tension. I feel like, you know, as I'm watching you play your cards, and I know what's in my hand, I'm trying to understand. Okay, what is he trying to do? What am I trying to do? Do I have better cards than him because I can't see his hand? And playing those cards and holding on to them till they make the most sense is part of the fun of this card-driven style of mechanic.
What I'll do is I'll show you how this works, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts.
So here's a look at the map, and as you can see, little small map, kind of half size. So I guess you would say this is 22 by 17, I believe is the correct sizing for this map. Mounted map, little wooden cubes, and a couple of discs, and a deck of cards and some scoring cards. That's all the components. We have a double-sided play aid. Upside down, there you go. So we have the operations costs, which some of them change or become impossible based on the tension level on the track. And then a little sequence of play with some detailed breakdowns of some of the more involved steps like resetting and then final campaign scoring. So, what you're going to do is you're going to get a hand of cards. And you have a hand of 6 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that's horrible. Here, let's get some different ones so that we can show a bit more variation here. So your hand of cards is going to either have red cards, which are Chinese oriented events, or blue ones, which are US oriented events, or black ones, which are neutral. Anyone can play either of those. But basically, you're going to get dealt a hand of cards, and you're going to play all of your cards back and forth, one at a time each, and you're going to use them either for the ops, which is the 2 value here, or for the event, which will break some rules and allow you to do some stuff, or for this little symbol down here at the bottom. So this has economics. And what that little part is that you would score the economics card. That's this one. So there's these 7 scoring cards that line up to regions. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's 6 for the FONOP CR stuff, and then 7 is the economics, which is all of the economics rows in the different countries, and your economic influence / investment into those countries. So you're going to play a card and you're going to choose what to do with it. So let's say the US player plays this card. They can either play it for 3 ops, at which point they're going to look at their little ops menu and spend 3 points, or they could play for the event. If the US has more than 7 diplomatic influence place 3 US influence, and move 1 Chinese economic influence to available, right? So you would either do that, or you play your 3 ops, or you could score the Philippines card. And you might go over to the Philippines and you assess if that's worth scoring. And the Philippines scoring card says on it, compare all cubes in the Philippines and Scarborough Shoal. The side with a positive differential scores it as VPs, not exceeding 3. So we look here, US has 1, 2 cubes, China has 1, 2 cubes, and then we go to the adjoining Scarborough Shoal. We each have 1 of phone up and 1 CR, and so we have 3 and 3, so there's no net difference, so you wouldn't score any points, so you wouldn't play it for the scoring at this point in the game. Now, I've got 3 ops, what am I going to do with those? Well, I've got 3 cubes available, so I might simply spend to put 3 out here. Now, that's a dead giveaway to my opponent that I have another Philippines scoring card in my hand, which I don't, but let's pretend that I do. And they're going to try to put a bunch of stuff in here or take these out on their card play. But if things stand and it gets back to me, I could play this card as my next card. Sure, it's a Chinese looking card with the red and the stars, but that just means we can't do the event. What I'm going to do is I'm going to score the Philippines. At this point it's 5, 6 to 3. The difference is 3. I'm going to score 1, 2, 3 points. That's real simple. Now the cool part of this game is that the Chinese player is now looking at their little hand, and you can see this little symbol here with the little kind of building with a flag on it. It's a territory icon. This one is an economic icon, and this one is a military icon with the F-22 there. So if this is the top card of the discard pile, which it is because the US player just played it to score the Philippines, the Chinese player is going to look in their hand, and if they can match the symbol to this card that's on top of the discard pile, they can play this event, or they could play this scoring. Well, when we scored the Philippines, the scoring card gets put face down, so no one can score the Philippines again. So we don't really care about the scoring part of it at this point of the game. But we could, if China has 2 or more CRs, place a CR. Great. We have 1, 2, 3 CRs, so we could place another CR for free. Doot, and then we're going to increase tension to critical. And when we increase tension to critical, we have to move a cube from available to reserve, because we kind of pushed those limits. But we don't care, we're going to keep going with it. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in here, so maybe we're looking to score this CR phone-up card, which is the net difference between the red and the blue cubes in this kind of central, the South China Sea area, basically. So there's lots of card play back and forth, adding cubes, moving cubes, because now the Philippines can't score anymore. Well, we might just say, well, let's just evacuate all of our stuff and move it elsewhere. So at that point, you might be like, well, cool, I'm now going to start playing cubes. Well, I don't have any available, but I can just move these ones out of here. Like, these aren't doing any good because this isn't going to score anymore. So my 3 ops, I'm going to put 3 influence in Vietnam. Well, great. I can take 1, 2, 3 from here, and all of a sudden, I'm over here. And it's very much that case of kind of the pump and dump scheme, which is like gross and pretty cynical, but that's the thesis of this game at times. Hey, we've got what we needed out of this, now we're going to turn our focus to this. And, you know, doing directed and pointed kind of focused things, it's going to give away your hand, so your enemy might be able to counter that more, but you might find if you can do it well and do it timely, you can get away with doing that instead of trying to spread out on this very small map and be deceptive to like play some 1-2 punches and, oh, I'm going to score Brunei and get my little point from there. But Vietnam's obviously, hey, this is looking real bad. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus 4. I'm going to score a point there. But Vietnam can score up to 3 points. Like Brunei can only score a maximum of 1 point. It's not worth as much in the game. But if you can start skewing some of these big countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, you can start getting, you know, a really good amount of points out of those as well. The other interesting part of this game is the political warfare. So you could spend a couple of ops to put in up to 3 cubes, depending on how many ops you spend. If you spend 1, you put 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. I'm going to gamble. I'm going to place 2 in political warfare. And then a Chinese player is going to flip the top card of the deck. And if this number equals or is lower than the amount that you committed to political warfare, your political warfare action succeeds. So you're going to get these back. And then what you can do is you can lock a country. And so what you're going to do is you're then going to pick any one country and you're going to lock it. So you're going to place a cube in the lock symbol. You're going to clear out either all the diplomatic influence or all the economic influence. So let's say we're going to get rid of these. Those can go back available. And it's going to increase tension. You can't do this if it's already at critical. But let's say it was at medium. It would go up to high. And so you really like, get this into your grips. And now you're trying to score this. Because now the opponent can't just use ops to put cubes in here. They can put cubes in through events, but not through ops. So you're really hamstring someone here. Then I'm going to dump the Indonesia scoring card. And the net here is 3. You can only score, 2. You can only score a maximum of 2 in Indonesia anyway. And so locking things, it can be risky if you have like bad cards and you're doing it with 1 or 2. 3 is a guarantee that it's going to trigger, but that's a waste of a 3 card, frankly. But these little actions help you to really kind of like lock an area down. Now, in this instance, the Chinese player might go here. You lock Vietnam, you clear out all of this, and all of a sudden, I've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. I'm looking to score Vietnam. And so then hopefully I've got the Vietnam card and I can score this and I'm going to pick up 3 points out of there. And so it's this really tense back and forth, extremely fast playing game. It says it plays in about half an hour. That is absolutely correct. But that's really the core of the game. You do this, you play a hand of cards 3 times and then at the end you're going to score every card once on top of everything that was done. And that's the whole point of the game. That's everything. It's a very tense little back and forth half-hour game, and that's what it's designed to be. What we'll do is we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts.
So that was a look at the game.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, not
mechanically.
Yeah. And the rule book is it's 10 pages, but most of it's pictures.
Yeah,
it's so
pretty
quick
simple
to learn.
Big text as well.
It's cool because I don't know, to see a game come from 2017 when we played it at Gen Con with Harold all the way to kind of its final form. It's cool to have seen that. And we don't do a ton of that kind of thing.
Right. We just got lucky that Harold was there and he brought a copy. That was really cool. But
the game itself is very, very enjoyable and it's perfect for what it wants to be, right? It's a short, tense little game. You play it, it was great. You think about some things politically speaking in it, and it's a bit of a thesis, right? But, the game awards the US player starting victory points because it skews Chinese in its favor.
Right. Yeah, this game, we talked about this. I think out of 100 plays, China's probably going to win this 70 to 80 times. What would be my guess?
Yeah.
Right? We haven't played 100 games.
And we might be wrong about that, but I've played it a few times and the Chinese have won every time.
Right. And actually, the first time we played at Gen Con, you did a Chinese instant victory. You completely dominated me because I was playing it wrong.
Which they got rid of.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. And
well, it does say U.S. instant victory.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it says that on there.
Oh.
I mean, to get 15 points, the other player has to be asleep.
Yes. That's like...
They're literally not...
I don't know how you would do that.
Because it's a back and forth game. If you're going up, I'm like, I've got to do something to get that skewed back down.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah,
because the games have been very tense. It is very back and forth during the course of the game.
Yep. And ultimately, the game came down. You won the game as the Chinese because of your CRs.
Yeah, the CRs.
You got 3 points, and that...
I got 3 points in Campaign 3, and then 3 points in Final Scoring. But also, those CRs' support of the
to win other
lands
regions.
Helped to either make them ties or to mitigate your gains from them.
Yeah.
And those are very, very strong in the game. Hence... I think over
there's
the
a little
course
bit of a handicap.
Right, they built in that handicap.
And that handicap is each side bids a certain amount of influence cubes to get to decide who plays China.
Yes.
So you bid 2.
Yes.
I bid 0 because I'm like, I don't really care
Right.
that much. You did it, so I started with 2 victory points. So you had a handicap. You're 2 behind already.
Yes.
You won by 2, so that was a 4-point VP swing. I did a couple of things that I would have taken back. I had a really good phone op card that I probably would have played differently than I played it. Or when you put it out, I would have probably tried to do it.
Yeah, tagging the events from the discard pile is something to really keep an eye on because it can be very powerful.
Yeah. There are 2 things about the game that I think are really unique and interesting. That concept of matching your symbols with the discarded events that are your events. That is a really slick and interesting mechanic because it engaged me into what we were doing as you were discarding your cards. I'm like, okay, I want to match that event because it's really good. And trying to understand that, or taking a weak card like these black, which are tied specifically to different countries. It's like the prime minister it represents, I think.
Yeah, most of those are people.
It's a one-op card. Doesn't really give me much. But you know what? If I can match that symbol with a really good event in the discard, all of a sudden I can put 3 or 4 influence out or really change the landscape. I really enjoyed that. The political warfare is also really slick. It's a big investment. In our game, the only time we used it was when you got an event that gave you 3.
Yes.
And you were able to immediately then, I think, execute that.
Yeah, you put 3 into political warfare and go for it.
And I think that was a discussion I had that I would have invested more into that earlier in the game so that I had that trump ability as well. I was more focused on trying to win the regions. But I think that political warfare and the matching of the symbols of the discarded events that are yours in the discard pile, those are really slick, gamey, and interesting mechanics. I enjoyed those a lot.
Something that was interesting was that in this game, we only did it that one time because the event card was like, yeah, do it. In the game that I played with Ed, he was doing it all the time.
Okay. Was he the U.S. or the Chinese?
He played the Chinese.
Okay.
And it was just very interesting to see it played very differently and for things to be much more heavily focused on.
Yeah.
I did it at least once, and he did it a couple times.
And in our game, we didn't do that. That's something I would change, but that political warfare is so key because it locks a region so that you really can't do much in it, and it allows you to remove cubes
like
from
a whole line of either one of economic
that
or
is
diplomatic.
so powerful.
And then you're doing that so that you can then bop it and score it. So you're only really doing that in the big countries. Philippines and Vietnam is typically where you're going to try and do that.
Yeah.
Because there's the most points available. But it was fascinating seeing a totally different style of game that we played versus what was done in that other game as well. The one thing I really enjoyed, and you talked about it, is this whole, if I discard one of your events, you can match a symbol to play the event out of the discard, if it's on top of the discard pile. And it's a really, it's very simple, a very clean way of doing it, of that whole, the card angst that you get in something like Twilight Struggle or Labyrinth. In those ones, it's like, if I play your event, it goes off.
Yep.
And it sucks, but it also...
And that's a totally different type of tension than this. But it's still tension.
Yes. In this, it's much more minor, but I'm still considering, hey, I've got a really good card for you. I'm going to play that later in my hand because you'll have fewer symbols to match with it, I hope.
Yeah.
Is often the strategy that I was going with those. But then it's like, oh, but I really need the ops on that because it's really good. Or it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter because the board state for the event doesn't matter, so I can ping that early because I know you're probably not going to take that. So you have elements of that hand management, but in a much more reduced way that doesn't lengthen the game. Because when you're triggering every event,
it just takes longer.
Card, makes the game a lot longer.
I do always like that about card-driven games, though, that the games that do allow an event to go off when you play your opponent's card, I just love having to mitigate the flaming disaster that's in my hand by doing things like, okay, I'll play this card because then I can remove this thing that, now card number 4 doesn't go off because he doesn't have a presence in whatever, Brunei, and I always enjoy doing that because it's just a different, it's like a game within a game.
Yeah.
This you have not quite that, but you're still thinking about it.
Yeah, there's a little bit to think about, but
Yeah.
it's not so serious. But it's a way that you get a little kind of drop of that feeling, but it's still a half-hour game.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really neat part of the design.
Well, and I think that's where ultimately where the strength of this game lies is in the 30-minute playtime.
Yes, agreed.
You can play this twice over a lunch hour. I'm going to take my copy home and I'm going to play it with my wife. I'm going to force her to play it.
Yeah.
Because we played Fort Sumter like 40 times. We also played 13 Days like 40 times. She enjoys these. I think she'll enjoy this.
Yeah.
This one's a little more in depth, I think, than Fort Sumter. It has a different level of depth, but it's also quick and easy. It's cool.
It's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot. There's like a dedicated solo bot and like solo stuff in here, so I might give
and
that
I'd
a go
like
at
to
some
try that,
point.
but I also think the strength of this game is the chess.
This is to me this is a two-player game.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm trying to read your face. I'm trying to read your enthusiasm. I'm trying to read your where you play.
I go here. Is that
Yeah.
a feint?
Yep.
You can't really afford to feint in this game very much. And it's the struggle is what makes this so good. And
Oh, yeah.
You lose some of that when it's a programmed AI that has a little card deck that does stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. The other thing that I thought was cool that I think I'll start to better understand once we play it more is the operations cost and how the tension track affects that. As the Chinese, you're trying to get out as many of those reclamation projects as possible, but when tension's high, you can't do that. As the U.S., you kind of want to get tension up a little bit to try and prevent some of that.
Yeah, it makes it very expensive for me to build those.
Right, so it's one of those things, because when it's even up to medium, which is the second box, all of a sudden those cost you 2, and it's a little harder to do. I didn't focus on this as much. I think I should have. That might be a more balancing element for the U.S. that we, because of the way we played it and my play style.
Whilst that's true, and you would think that, I tried to do that to the Chinese player when
And
I
it
played with
didn't
Ed.
work.
He would play those one-up cards where it's
Yep.
like, set tension
Lower
to
the
any
tension
level.
to any level,
So he'd
yeah.
lower it to low, and then he'd just spend the one-up to build one. And he did it to me like 4 times.
Well, I'm trying to think,
That's
yeah.
all the same. It's brutal.
You're right.
So, like, you can play some of that, but if they've got those one-up cards, it's like, oh.
Well, a lot of the U.S. cards are like increase tension by 1, and whether you do anything that increases tension or not, but yeah, every one of these black cards is like tension to low.
You set it to low, and you get one up. Great.
Yeah.
You set it to low, I build one CI.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I spent
But
all that time getting it to critical.
yeah, but there's a lot to like here. I think if you enjoy card-driven games, if you enjoy quick-hitting games, and if you enjoy games that I think are going to make your brain burn a little bit, but still play in 30 minutes, I think this is for you.
Yeah,
Very good game.
These are great. This would be a great classroom game in an educational setting as well because of that time length, and it's very clean and easy to learn as well.
Well, the other thing I said earlier was the thematic connection of what's going on here and how it plays out on the board. I think that's why it would make a good educational.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, we fought over Indonesia. I'm going to now start moving my stuff over here because we got to fight over Philippines because Indonesia's already scored. And if you don't do that, the U.S. or the Chinese are going to dominate, and you got to be...
The physical cube limit, the physical
it's very
card
cool.
limit, you can't dominate the board
No.
in a long-term way, at least.
Sometimes I feel like in Twilight Struggle, or if it gets away from you, it's like you can never come back. In this game, I feel like it gets away from you a little bit, but you can still come back.
Yeah,
because of the limit on the cubes.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm focusing on here, that side has less stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
It will always be that way. Yeah, whereas, Twilight Struggle, it's like, I've got unlimited influence. Like, as long as I can get it out, I can get myself into, like, a towering position.
Yeah,
and
and it's
not possible.
almost impenetrable. So, yeah,
So,
great game, though. Really fun.
Flashpoint, South China Sea from GMT Games. Check it out if there's something interesting. You could play this with absolutely anyone.
Yeah.
This would be a great introductory war game as well.
And 2 other games very similar to this are Fort Sumter and Red Flag Over Paris. 2 games from GMT, kind of that quick-hitting, card-driven style game. I think these 3 are kind of while they're in a different series.
Yeah.
Still in a similar family.
Yeah, they sit in a nice, quick playing,
Yep.
cool area within wargaming for sure.
Plus, you're dealing with historical things. You're not playing unicorns and glitter. Like I've played unicorn glitter luck with my daughter millions of times, which is fun. But I'd rather be playing this with them because I think it teaches them a little bit more about history and the world and geopolitics. But
So,
anyway, that's me.
check this out if you're interested. Great design from Harold Buchanan. Flashpoint South China Sea from GMT Games. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.